What was the most absurd thing you've heard from an overly religious person? You're about to hear some of the wildest, most unforgettable Reddit stories out there, each one different, each one shockingly real. And if any of them hit close to home or remind you of your own experience, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your story, and you never know who else might connect with it. And hey, if you love true stories with jaw-dropping twists, make sure to subscribe so you never miss what's coming next. Story 1, my friend's mom is mentally ill and hyper-religious. Bad combo. She was also a check forger. She honestly believed that every time she passed a bad check at a supermarket and got away with it was because angels were protecting her. If she got busted and banned from a store, it was because angels were protecting her, and had she not gotten caught, she would have gotten food poisoning and died. The woman literally had to drive 45 minutes to get to a supermarket, it because she was barred from every other one that was closer. And she'd refuse to pay for food with cash, because then the angels wouldn't have a chance to save her. Story 2, this is kinda weird, but one day this one friend of mine was telling us why she turned vegetarian. It's mainly because she saw this film about how animals are really mistreated and stuff and doesn't want to be part of it. It was a good and wholesome conversation until this one really religious girl spoke up out of nowhere and said, "Yeah, I know all these fast food places mistreat the animals, but I know Phil, it doesn't because they're in the faith." I haven't been able to stop thinking about this comment every time I drive by a Phil, ever since. Story 3, my parents put me in a private Christian school for high school. One of the teachers there told me that anyone who isn't Christian is incapable of good. He explained it by saying that Christians are motivated by doing things for God and simply because they're right, but Christians do things for selfish reasons, and that makes the act not good. I asked about donations and charity work, and he said people did it to be seen by others and be praised. I asked about anonymous donations and genuinely good people, but he said that even those people were doing it because it made themselves feel good. This guy still teaches kids. Edit. I called him on that right then and there, and in his own words, he was doing everything he did in life for God, and that made all of it good. I looked up to that man. I'm disgusted in him now and disappointed in myself for not seeing through him sooner. Story 4, 2 instances come to mind. I overheard an older lady talking with some friends after church once. She said, "I'm so worried about my granddaughter. She moved in with her boyfriend. How could she? She was such a good girl." Now, granted, I don't exactly know any context or anything to this, but the way she said it made it sound like her granddaughter, who sounds like a decent human being, simply moved in with her boyfriend. And that was just the worst thing, because they weren't married. I guess they all talked about me like that when I did it. Second thing, I was told that it is my Christian duty to bear my Christian husband kids after I said I didn't really want them. I was 16, he was the new youth pastor, and we were at a lake just to have fun. No sermons, no anything. Just a little church get-together for some fellowship. He's the reason that a little part of my not wanting to have kids is out of spite. Story 5, an entire church service was planned by God to get me to join a church. Long story. This happened a few years ago. I was working with a girl who was around my age. She was married, and she really wanted me to meet her husband. Her husband was a youth pastor or youth minister at some church. She gave me his number, and we made plans to play basketball one Saturday. We played basketball, and the pastor of the church played as well. He seemed pretty cool, and he was joking around a lot. He asked me after the game was over if I was going to the service. I told him I wasn't religious, and he was very relaxed and said he understood if I didn't go, but I was welcome. My friend and her husband convinced me to go to service on Sunday. Well, I thought church was a formal experience, so I dressed up with a shirt and tie and everything, but when I arrive it's like cool, newt church. My friend's husband was wearing flip-flops and board shorts. Anyway, we get seated, and as soon as the service starts, I knew I had made a huge mistake. A Christian rock band starts playing on stage, and as the song is going on, I look over and my friend and her husband have their arms up in the air. The pastor comes out and gives his sermon, more songs, finishing words, and then at the end they ask everyone to bow their heads and close their eyes, and the pastor asks if we enjoyed the sermon today to raise our hand. What the fuck am I going to do? Not raise my hand, so I raise my hand and someone puts a card into it. Service ends and I look at the card and it's for my contact information. Well, then I look over and my friend's husband is crying. And he says, I am so happy that you have decided to become a Christian and to let Jesus Christ into your heart. I just replied, I don't think I'm ready for labels or anything. He was adamant that I was ready and he and his wife would help me. And then his wife reaches across and squeezes my hand, and she's just saying there's just so much evidence that Christ exists. So much evidence. Needless to say, I'm already uncomfortable, like on a date that has come on way too strong. But we're working our way out, and they've given me this grab bag of church swag and a Bible, and we're sticking around to talk to the pastor who I thought was pretty normal up to that point. He pulls me off to the side, and we chit-chat about NFL games that afternoon and blah blah blah. And then he's like, I noticed you raise your hand at the end of our service today. God told me that today's sermon was going to be special, and I think this entire service was just for you. It was to bring you to our congregation. I never went back. That was the creepiest part by far. I called my family immediately after and was just like, what the fuck? Because it felt so predatory, and I could see that same tactic being used on someone who was feeling depressed and then believing it. I don't know, it was bad. I think my coworker/friend knew that I didn't buy it, and she never made a big deal about me never returning or wanting to socialize with her husband. She was incredibly nice and a great person, but our beliefs were not in any way similar. Good times, story 6. I suffer from depression. I know that depression is caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain, that my brain doesn't produce enough serotonin, and that's why I get sad sometimes. This lady told me that my depression is caused by the absence of Jesus. There is a hole in my heart made for Jesus, and because I haven't accepted him, then Satan entered my heart, and he is the one causing all these bad thoughts. She said I was empty inside. Edit. Forgot to mention she was being a real pious and condescending cunt about it, as if she was perfect, I was broken, and she knew better than I do. I said, lady, I'd rather be empty than full of shit. Fuck you and fuck your Jesus. Story 7. My grandfather was a priest in the Anglican Church, and later, when they came to Oz, both Grandpa and Grandma were ministers in their Pentecostalish Christian City church faith. When a family member came out as trans and later also gay, it took them a while, but they accepted him. They loved him and prayed with him and never let anyone in their congregation speak ill of him or their acceptance of him. He and his boyfriend stayed with them when he was getting his surgery done, and afterwards they took care of him as he recovered. They are the wonderful people who remind me that not all religious people are crazy, just the crazy ones. My Catholic uncle still hasn't completely come around, though. Story 8. I was in my town during a Pride event. It was great. I would have taken part, but I didn't realize it was happening. You probably already know where this is going. The lady and her husband were yelling at a gay couple saying how they were sinners. I walked over to them and said, listen lady, you're wearing jeans and a cotton jumper. Mixed fabrics is just as bad as being gay according to the Bible, so just let them live. Her response. We don't have to listen to that part because times have moved on since then. Waha lady, so you're saying God is still angry about gay people but not at clothes. Don't fucking cherry pick what you believe. Believe all of the Old Testament or none of it. Story 9. My ex-girlfriend worked in the same town I lived in, but lived about 30 minutes away with her aunt and uncle, who were very, very religious and strict about certain things. Several times after she got off work, there would be a really bad storm going, including a few that had produced tornadoes earlier. She would call her aunt and uncle and tell them she was wanting to stay the night at my place to wait out the storm. rather than risk driving through a storm that has, and I cannot stress this enough, has already produced fucking tornadoes. They told her that because we were not married that it would be wrong for her to stay, that she could choose to, but she would no longer be allowed to live in their home if she did. So she would have to make this 30-minute drive in the middle of a nasty storm. We would talk it over, that she could stay with me and my folks, but it always came up. What if something happens and she can't stay with us? Where would she go? Mind you, she had stayed with us before. Anytime we were gonna go visit her dad, who lived 8 hours away, she'd stay with us so we could leave early in the morning. That was fine with them. Then after we broke up mutual, we are still friends, and she got her own apartment. She came out as bi, she had told me before we started dating. She told her aunt and uncle that she wanted to wait until she had her own place before she told them. They had the fucking nerve to be surprised when she said she was afraid they'd kick her out once they knew, when they made it very clear they were not supportive of anything that wasn't 100% straight. Story 10 two things. First one, a girl in high school proclaimed that animals didn't have souls. We were talking about our pets one day, and I mentioned a dog that we had to put down, and that's when she started in on how animals don't go anywhere when they die because without a conscience, they have no soul. Like, girl, I have met earthworms with more of a conscience than most people. Second story, a coworker told me once that he had a crush on a boy when he was in middle school, and has always felt that he might be gay. He was 27 at the time of this convo. I asked why, if he feels this way, why he continues to try and date women. His response was that when he first had these feelings, he went to his family about it, and they all sat at the kitchen table with him and proceeded to pray the gay away. He's currently 35 and continues to live in denial. Very, very sad. Story 11. Oh, where to begin? Women can't teach men, it's in the Bible. This was from a female 4th grade teacher who conveniently forgot the age of adulthood, used to be around 4th grade when the Bible was written. I won't get this virus. I have the ultimate protector Jesus to keep me safe. Yeah, your kidney stones suck, but if you just believed in Jesus again, he'd make them go away. Bitch, shut the fuck up. I got my first kidney stone when I was still a believer, and even if you were right, an immortal God that has to resort to extortion is pretty fucking pathetic. Those were probably the 3 best ones. Story 12, that evolution is fake. The Earth is no more than 10,000 years old and dinosaurs do not exist and have never existed, and science is fake. And also that you don't have to worry that you'll die from corona because God watches over you. How do they explain the millions already dead? Also that LGBT is a sin and God didn't want it that way. If he didn't want it that way, why are people like that then? Also, if God were real, why is Earth the only planet with life? Sometimes religious people just make me go OMG SMH. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't believe in any religion, but if you think logically, the Bible ain't true. Story 13, mostly, it's the lines from proclaimed devout Christians that go directly against the Christian values taught in the New Testament. Primarily, I don't go there / associate with that person because others may think I support that sin. So much for doing God's work and not worrying yourself about the judgments from others. Others would be the cherry pickers. Had one guy who cheated on his wife before this post about how wives should submit to their husbands. He didn't like that I replied that husbands should treat their wives as rare treasures and put their needs above his own. Yeah, most of those favored cherry-picked verses have corresponding verses that balance things out, but the cherry pickers never want to bring those verses up. This is where it pays to be educated in what the Bible actually says. Story 14. One time I had a conversation with a hardcore Christian about the "thou shalt not kill" commandment. He mentioned that he strongly supported our military. Now don't get me wrong, I don't have anything against the military. But to challenge his beliefs, I said something to the extent of, if God said that killing is wrong, then why is it okay when the military does it? I mean, technically, killing is killing, so that makes the military a bunch of sinners. After saying that, this guy was stuttering all over the place. He claimed that there was a passage in the Bible that could explain this. He retrieved a Bible and looked for the passage. He never found it. Story 15, me watching my young second cousin go red and itchy with hives while my cousin is feeding him cheese cousin. The doctor said he was lactose intolerant, but we brought it to the community and prayed it away, and now look at him. He loves cheese, me, still looking at my second cousin who is munching on cheese while scratching at his red, bumpy face and neck skin me. You, huh? He's like red though. Cousin, feeding him more cheese and not really paying attention, cousin. There's another child there who has a peanut allergy, but we prayed that away too. Thank the Lord, right. I already knew her and her husband were bigoted. No, his ark was real. Idiots, but that was genuinely stressful to hear, and I made sure to check with my aunt that the peanut allergy kid wasn't in danger. Thankfully, his mom appreciates their thoughts, but sticks with science. Story 16, I work at a Starbucks. One of our regulars, who always orders a very complicated and modified frappuccino, drove up to the speaker box and ordered, and then screamed at us that we'd better make it right this time because the last time we put way too much ice. Okay, dude. Then he got to the window and proceeded to ask the barista in the window, "Are you born again?" "I go to church," she said. "Well, hat doesn't mean you're born again, and you'd better be. Jesus is coming back next week. My toddler told me so." Just the combination of his horrible behavior as a supposed Christian, plus telling us Jesus was coming back because his 2-year old is a prophet, pretty much sent us all over the edge. Story 17, wife and I had just moved into a new neighborhood and attended a backyard BBQ. For background, we are a biracial couple that do not practice a religion, and the neighborhood's demographic is primarily white, Christian, and elderly. Regardless, we were enjoying ourselves chatting with our new neighbors. A few hours in, we're having a discussion with a gent about the local public school system and our thoughts as teachers on charter schools. Eventually, this highly religious man, who we find out is an elected government official, sighs and then blurts out, "But who really cares about fighting it? I'm just doing this until the apocalypse comes, which should be any day now." This was stared matter of factly without the slightest sign of humor. My wife and I tried to laugh it off to deflect it as a joke, but he then clarified his seriousness on the end being near. We noped out of there shortly after and made a point to vote against that nut job during his re-election. He won by the way. Story 18, a woman said she was gonna exercise me because I didn't want to go to their church when they invited me. I'm an atheist and haven't seen any proof of God. When I said that I'm not interested, they started saying that Satan was inside me and was trying to steal my soul or some shit. I just walked away while she was screaming like a lunatic. Now I can't enter in case I corrupt the others. Weird shit man story 19, my child being stillborn is in God's plan, and it's all for the best. Write you what the best is was beyond me. You shouldn't be friends with gays because you're a Christian and God wouldn't like it. They didn't like it when I pointed out that Jesus would be friends with gay people because he loved everyone. I couldn't wear jeans to church because God is watching. I then pointed out that if God is omnipotent and omnipresent, then he's already seen me naked, and so he won't mind seeing me in jeans. And people wonder why I'm not a Christian anymore. Story 20, that I am much easier to manipulate because I do not believe in any God, so another religion might take over my heart. Not only that, but also I was questioned by my parents more often than I wanted, if somehow I became an ex-bloody man / extremist Islamist. They are convinced that without God I have no reason to do good deeds, and anything bad that happens is because I don't believe in God. This is the reason I never told them I am an atheist, and they found out accidentally. Anything bad would be a direct message from God that I shouldn't be an atheist. I despise religion for the level of fear and manipulation it instills in people. It is fortunate that I live with my dad that is so crazy about religion, religious but understanding of me. Story 21, I had a group come into my school to do a talk on drunk driving. The first part of the talk was good and informative and sad. The speaker's brother passed away due to drunk driving. The second part was all religious. He was shoving it in our face and down our throats, and says his brother's first mistake was losing faith in God, and basically that when you lose faith in God, you go down a road that leads to early death. At one point he was discussing forgiveness because he forgave the driver that killed his brother and said, "I tell everyone you just gotta forgive." And they all ask me what about my abusive father or my boyfriend who are *ped me, and I tell them you got to forgive them. And the entire school literally gasped in disgust. He also, without the school's permission, contacted local clergies, and they came around to students and pulled them aside to talk about God. I was one of them. Lady literally grabbed my arm and started pulling and said, "Let's talk." She asked if I knew where I'd go after I'd die, and I told her, truthfully, I didn't know. She then flipped to a page in her mini Bible in Romans, I think, and said those who believe in God will receive his gift of eternal life, but those who turn their back to God have committed sin, and sin is punishable by death, and told me to think about that. Also, they cornered a gay couple at a different school and harassed them. The speaker had a book I decided to read, but I stopped after he said that even thinking impure thoughts means you are impure. If you think about sex, you aren't a virgin. It was just the dark side of religion. A lot of my religious friends agreed this went way too far, and they weren't invited back. Story 22 women should not work outside the home for any reason. Their only existence is to be her husband's assistant and to take care of any children they have. This should be done regardless of financial situation, as the man should strive to provide, and if that's not enough, God will provide. I stormed out of the church service as a teenager got grounded for embarrassing my parents later. I think preacher was justifying with Genesis about Eve being created to be Adam's helpmate. Also stormed out of a service because preacher was talking about it being a sin to marry outside your own race, and was trying to back it up with some scripture. Story 23, I lived in New Orleans for about a decade, and every big celebration Christian wackos from Florida would show up with their big misspelled signs about how everyone nogged them is going to hell, usually with bull horns to boot. The restaurant I worked at was on Royal Street, a block off Bourbon, so I would talk to them on my smoke breaks. I brought up the sizable homeless camp less than 2 miles away, and the fact that they were in a city quite famous for our bread and fish, and that they could do more good and likely save more people by following Christ's example. One guy's response was, "No, God called me to shame all sinners in his name." I said, "Do not judge lest ye be judged," and went back to selling wine to acridly drunk people. Story 24, dude I lived with for a short period of time. I was explaining how the Bible isn't 100% accurate because it's been translated from many different languages and edited heavily to fit the views and needs of whoever was currently in charge at the time of revising, while also losing the context of the society different parts were written for. He tried telling me that the red text in the Bible could never be changed and was completely God's truth. I was confused and asked him what red text, maybe red text in the version of the Bible he had. But he said it was in all Bibles. He couldn't explain anything and kinda just insisted he was right. He was also gay and didn't believe in gay marriage. Story 25, old friend from high school visited a few years ago. We hadn't seen each other since graduation about 10 years prior. We planned a whole weekend of girl time. Dropped my then 5-year-old off at my aunt's house and we headed to the city. I quickly found out that she had found religion in the last 10 years. She refuses to go clothes shopping since all the window displays showed disrespectful women's clothing, i.e. swimsuits. I tried to have fun for 2 days, but at the end was super ready to take her to the airport. We picked up my toddler so she and I could leave as soon as we dropped my friend off. Put kiddo in the back seat with a DVD player and hit the road. Kiddo starting watching an old episode of The Simpsons. My friend went off. Apparently letting my kid watch cartoons was the equivalent of teaching her to be a Satanist, a prostitute, and all-around evil. Haven't spoke to the friend since story 26. My mom's cousin and his wife are super crazy charismatic Christians. I use Christians lightly because they are so dang crazy. I don't think they are biblical Christians. They believe that anyone who is sick or does not like them has demons. They do a demon-expelling ritual every morning in case any entered them during the night, the time of evil. We didn't know this about them until they visited us in the US from Germany 10 years ago. They told my grandmother, his aunt, the reason she had diabetes is because she was sinful and had demons in her. They also emailed my uncle a year after their visit when my 14-year cousin was dying from a terminal brain tumor that they needed to expel demons from him and he would live. That's evil if you ask me. How dare they? My uncle knew it was bull. They also tried expelling the demons from our dog because she didn't want them to pet her. Don't blame her actually. It didn't work. She still didn't like them. Story 27. When my parents were newly married 9 years before they even considered having children, my insanely Catholic Nana, Dad's mum, called my mum at her workplace to scream at her over the phone about how, if she didn't have her children baptized, she would kidnap them and do it herself. Because no grandchild of hers was going to burn in hell. My parents hadn't even really considered children at that stage, let alone if they would be baptized, and it certainly wasn't discussed with my church-crazy grandparents. Story 28. A long time ago, when my kid got his first job, he was working as a clerk at a thrift store down the street. One day, some woman took all of the tags off of the clothes she wanted to buy. Store policy was no tags, no sale, so my kid refused to sell this woman the clothes. She sat there and argued with him while his co-worker went to get the manager. Well, she argued. My kid just refused to sell her the pile of clothes. Just before the manager showed up, the woman slammed her hands down on the counter and shouted, "Jesus wants you to sell me these clothes." Story 29. A classmate's mom stopped my 2 friends and I in the parking lot of our school. Since she saw my friends holding hands, they're both girls, and were dating at the time, she said, "You two are way too young to be gay. We keep on losing innocent kids to the evilness of gay adults. Your parents should be ashamed of both of you." Then she gestured her hand towards me and said, "Are you gay too?" I said no, and she demanded that I stop hanging out with my friends just because of their sexuality. One of my friends almost started crying, and that was when I told her to fuck off. I'm so damn angry that this woman had the gall to walk up to 3 12-year-old girls, scream at them for being themselves, and tell me to not hang out with them because straight children shouldn't hang out with lesbian children. The friend who almost cried started questioning herself and thinking of herself as a bad person just because of that woman. This happened almost 2 years ago, and I'm so upset at that woman. I also feel bad for her son, since he also had gay friends, but she forced him to stop hanging out with them. Story 30. My mom's a priest Protestant, and once there was some festival where my mother's church had a workshop, where there would be a person from each religion answering people's questions. Anyways, there was this guy who had to stay at our place while the festival was going on, 'cause he lived 6 hours away. He stayed in our guest room and had dinner with us every night. He was a Christian of some sort. He was very, very religious, like he thought every word in the Bible was true. That created some awkward conversations. For example, he was strictly against female priests. He literally told my mom that he hoped she didn't believe in hell, because that was where she would be going. He was very homophobic. My sister and I are both bisexual, so that was very annoying. The time where he shocked me the most, though, would have been when he told us that his child had died a year prior, and that it had been a really tough time for him. Not because he was sad, though. He said that it was so hard constantly having to pretend being sad around other people, when actually he was so happy for his son being in heaven with God. The day after that, he told my mom about how, maybe if she quit her job now, there would still be hope for her to get to heaven. He was just trying to save my mom, but we couldn't take it anymore, so my mom paid for a hotel he could stay at. This made him very angry, so my mom told him to pay for his hotel himself. Story 31 went to a Christian school from preschool 8th grade, and the principal there is probably the strangest and most mysterious person I've ever met. She's also far from the good type of Christian that you're supposed to be. Not only was she the fire and brimstone type, but she acted like she and God conversed with each other regularly. I don't mean feeling called to do something. That's different. I mean she would act like she was having literal conversations with God. She yelled at us, she used an extremely painful paddle as punishment including on preschoolers like me, which she later denied. She talked about public school like it was evil and dangerous, and she would tell stories about experiences with demons and all sorts of things about her life that are probably made up. She taught my dad at a public middle school, and he swears that she was a completely different person back then. His stories about her don't line up with how she would recount her life now. Something happened to her at some point that completely changed her, and I have no idea what it could have been. And I haven't even gotten into the curriculum that the school uses, which is based in Florida and is taught from an extremely biased creationist Southern Baptist perspective. I believe they even lost a court case over how they teach science in California once, but that's an entirely different discussion. You might blame my parents for me having to experience this place, but don't. They didn't know at first. They eventually came to realize how bad it was there, but we all agreed that I would stick it out until the end, simply because they teach high school level math and English, which was admittedly very helpful for high school. Story 32, it was almost closing time. I'm on till. Everyone else, 2 stock boys, and our supervisor are all up the tills. A lady and her husband come up to pay. He puts his stuff on the counter while she starts chatting up the stock boys. Keeps commenting on how nice the hair on the younger boy was. It was creepy, and he finally said, I guess I just got lucky with the color. Cue her screeching like a harpy. How dare you say luck? Luck is derived of Lucifer. You have insulted Jesus. And then she started to loudly pray. The boys are confused. Her husband sighs, gives me this, I'm so sorry, look, and walks away after paying. His wife still crying and screaming. As they walk away, I do the last closing call and tack on, have a lucky day, knowing they can hear me. We could all hear her annoyed and angry screech through the doors. Story 33 well. My uncle is the most overly religious person you'll ever meet in your life. He claims that certain objects, animals, movies, TV shows, video games, and even board games are ungodly, and therefore should not be used, looked at, watched, or played. For example, foxes, wolves, and snakes are ungodly because they are predators. Any movie, TV show, or representation of people with superpowers is ungodly. Any game where you have to kill things, even Doom, where you literally kill fucking demons, is ungodly. Oh, and Candyland is ungodly because candy shouldn't come to life. And one last thing, he thinks that Halloween is the celebration of Satan's birthday, even though I've explained to him many times that Halloween started in Ireland as All Hallows' Eve, a day where people would scare away evil spirits in preparation for All Hallows, a day where the bond between the afterlife and the living world is stronger, so that loved ones can visit safely, which by the way is a coincidence with the Mexican holiday, the Day of the Dead, which has the same circumstances. He also thinks that mental health is a demon possession. So depression is just a demon in your head, and anyone on the autism spectrum should be exorcised because they are possessed. He's just stuck in his ways and refuses to listen to anyone else's opinions. Story 34 back, when I still lived in my parents' house, we lived in a neighborhood with a big church community. The Dutch church community is pretty strict and has the rules like no TVs. You don't do anything on Sundays except going to church, singing psalms before dinner, and ladies cannot wear pants, only skirts are allowed. These rules are already pretty absurd for me, but what really shocked me is how they brainwash their children. One summer evening, I was sitting in my garden, and the neighbors just finished eating and started reading a Bible verse, not sure, but it was a religious story out loud. The story she told was about monkeys and lions ripping people apart in hell. And then she literally said to the child, "You know what this means. If you are not a good child, and you will not listen to me, you will go to hell, and these creatures will haunt you and tear you apart." I was so shocked. Unbelievable that you use these absurd stories to get some kind of leverage over your children just so they will listen to you. Story 35 may not be absurd, but it was hurtful. My aunt had come to visit when I was in college living at my parents' home, and she and I were having a conversation about religion. I was raised Catholic, but had left the church around 15. She was some Protestant denomination. I had a really good friend who was Muslim, and I asked her if he was going to hell despite being a good person, just because he was Muslim. She said yes. Then I asked if she thought I was going to hell, even though I lived a moral life, because I don't believe in Jesus. She said, "Darling, I don't think it, I know it." I was like, okay, have a good night, left the room, never discussed much of anything else with her from then on out because there's no point. She effectively ended any relationship we had with that sentence. A few years later, I was reminded of it while talking with my mom and told her what her sister had said to me, and she was angry. The type of our mother did not raise us to be like that. How dare she say something so ugly to my child? Angry. I appreciated my mom being mad on my behalf, but told her not to worry. It doesn't change anything at this point, and all I can do is live a good life, be good to my fellow humans, and not let my self-righteous relatives bother me. Story 36. So, in Islam, there are two majority sects, Sunnis and Shias. Anyways, I'm personally a Shia just due to personal belief and stuff, but I'm not overly religious. Once in my school, which had people from every religion, a Sunni came up to me and said straight blank to my face, "You aren't Muslim. You don't follow the Prophet, Muhammad, and you don't even believe in God." I started laughing because she was very uneducated. Summary for the story: please educate yourself before making assumptions. I know for a fact that Muslims can be very rude and stuff when it comes to people from other religions expressing their views. I'm not speaking on behalf of every Muslim, but I've seen many Muslims asking Christians and Jews and Hindus to convert to Islam. Sorry about that on behalf of decent Muslims. I can help you understand the religion, but I won't force you to convert. That's just crazy. Story 37. A friend was convinced she was in Congress with a demon disguised as an angel, and the angel gave her powers. She could apparently read tarot cards and predict the future. I asked for proof and she said, "I don't do that anymore. I've realized that it's actually a demon controlling me." After refusing all her attempts to convert me, she finally caved and sent me a video as proof of her powers. It was a candle flame gently bobbing up and down. I didn't see anything wrong in it, so I asked her what it proved. She said, "Can't you see? The flame makes a heart shape more than once. It's the Antichrist. He's sending the hearts." I asked her if she really thought the Antichrist had nothing better to do than blow hearts at people through candle flames like a teenage girl with a crush. She finally got offended enough to stop talking to me. Story 38. That I am punished by insert random god for the crimes I committed in my life before this life, and every disability or not normal, like LGBT, is part of that punishment. It's always kinda hilarious when PPL like that approach me at train stations or at parks. I've printed out some pentagrams onto self-sticking paper, so every time when they be like, "You are a sinner, you will go to hell," I get these stickers out and stick it to their clothes and be like, "Here, I came straight from hell, I've brought you a souvenir." Then they try to wipe it down from their chest until they really got grip and removed it. It's fun, especially with Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm atheist and the only thing that I believe in is science, but also science is sure that there are things beyond human ability of realizing/understanding, so I don't believe in heaven or God or whatsoever, but am certainly pretty sure that there is in fact more than we see. To be honest, I'm pretty disappointed that there is no hell. Would recommend. Story 39. My family had some problems at the time, so my dad took me and my brother for spiritual meditation. The first day we went there, it all seemed calm. They greeted us well and helped our minds calm. The next day we saw the real shit. Our mentor was a lady in her 50s. She talked about how all countries in the world are impure, and only our country was purely loved by God. She said that in 20 years there will be monuments of gold rising from the ground, and all good people will become gods/goddesses. She also said how sex was a very bad thing, and how sex wasn't necessary to conceive a child. According to her, if you prayed hard enough with dedication, God will make the wife pregnant, and you won't even need to touch her. She was so into it that we couldn't say a word. Note that this is a big community with spiritual healing centers all over the country, and their leader is a very famous woman who has her own TV show. As funny as it was, we were all terrified of this lady. We wanted to leave but thought that if we sounded rude she'd attack us for sure. So my dad pretended as if he got a phone call, told her that one of our uncles was coming over and there was no one at home, so we had to leave immediately. The lady was kinda pissed she got interrupted midway, but she let us leave, telling us to come back soon. We didn't. As soon as we left, we laughed about what the fuck just happened. I don't know if this was their way of spiritual healing, but it sure did put us in a very happy mood for the next few days. Story 40, I am pretty sure these were the personal opinions of the overtly religious people. Mormon, I can't masturbate, but if someone jerks me off, that's fine. Muslim, COVID-19 is sent by God as a punishment for non-Muslims, therefore it cannot harm Muslims, unless of course they are equally sinful. Jewish, eating bacon at graduation party like it's her last day on earth. I asked her if that's kosher. She had given me a lecture on her kosher diet earlier, and her response was, yeah, we can't have pork. Pig, you know, this is just bacon Hindu. Dude had to go back home to India to visit as it was time for his infant nephew to piss on his grandfather's head. He also said they consumed cow's pee in a ceremonial/ritual manner. Now this guy joked around a lot, so this could be him messing with us. But he also never consumed meat on Tuesdays as part of his religion, just a funny memory. Another Orthodox Jewish girl at our prom got sick and threw up. They were very strictly religious. I heard her mom furious at her and dad yelling all disappointed. Later on found out that the girl threw up visible chunks of bacon and her mother went ballistic. Story 41. I used to be a Christian and was part of a Pentecostal church. One weekend there was a ladies' ministry going on, and during the Sunday morning service, one of the leaders from another church got up to speak. She explained that in her church she was the head of the children's ministry, and that she had recently taught the kids about healing. The way she went about it was she got another member of the church to come into the room and stand in the middle while the kids covered them head to toe in toilet paper. She then said that the person was very sick and that they could heal the person in Jesus' name. They then proceeded to rip the toilet paper off and the person was healed. The children were delighted in this. That person was never sick. She stated as much while she was talking. As far as I am concerned, Christian or not, that woman has tricked and deceived children into giving false testimony. Her point was to find creative ways of teaching children in church, and decided this was a story she would tell. I was very loudly angry about this whilst sat next to the elders of our church, and this woman could obviously tell. I left the room, complained to the elders about it, but nothing got done. Story 42, gays go to hell. I'm pretty sure lots of people in the LGBTQ+ community are far more open-minded and kind-hearted than lots of people in the church, and that embarrasses me. Even if homosexuality and the like is a sin, I won't share whether or not I actually think homosexuality is a sin. So what? Jesus made friends with the sinners, and his enemies were almost always prideful, corrupt people in the church who thought the Messiah would come to destroy their adversaries as opposed to saving everyone and showing them love. In my opinion, those guys are far worse than people whose major sin is, loving. Would someone really go to hell just because they love someone? I'm not saying every single person in the LGBTQ+ community is absolutely clean. I'm just saying that the church isn't any different, or they're probably even worse. Since several overly religious people have been using God's name to unrightfully judge others, and history shows that they always have been, I'm just saying, a true pastor won't just preach about God's wrath. He or she will talk first and foremost about the forgiveness, mercy, and love that the Lord promises all people, all sinners.